So last night I got a chance to play Gundam Evolution. It's in like open beta testing or slightly restricted beta testing. You just have to request access to it on Steam. It's essentially an Overwatch clone. It's a hero shooter that is very, very, very similar to Overwatch, but with Gundams. And some of the characters are straight ripoffs. The character that's on screen right now is essentially Widowmaker. There's a Genji. There's a Soldier 76. They have more than just the gun overlap. They'll have two or more abilities overlapping with those Overwatch heroes. And some are more unique. Some are really cool and have absolutely nothing to do with Overwatch and feel very authentic to Gundam, which is awesome. The character design is pretty good, especially on the flashier units. The Barbatos, I forget the name of the Genji one off the top of my head, but they look really cool. And then some of the units look very, very generic. But overall, I think the art style is pretty good, even if the graphics are not. What I do have a giant problem with in this game at the moment is hit registration, hit boxes, and the movement. So, the movement, you have these dashes and a jump that are both tied to the same energy bar. You can't use them in conjunction, so you can't jump and then dash, or dash or jump mid quote unquote sprint, which is just you constantly boosting. Which makes the movement feel really clunky. Oh, there's also no crouch button, which is awkward. It's very awkward sometimes. And more importantly than the general movement is the movement while shooting. So side strafing is floaty. You could say the same thing about Overwatch, just to a lesser extent. And you can't shoot while jumping in this game, or it's very inaccurate. Also, hip firing, very inaccurate with some characters. And that is not the case in Overwatch. And it makes Overwatch feel very smooth and more movement-based than just standing still and shooting, which helps the overall game feel, the flow, makes things feel very fast, very tight. This game does not have that. So the movement and the combat are separate entities. They don't intertwine very well. That was maybe my biggest complaint with the game, aside from the hitboxes, which I'll touch on in just a moment. But the movement does not feel good. And that is almost a deal breaker for me in and of itself. Now, before I go into the hitboxes and continue complaining about the game, I would like to touch on what it does really well, which is the power fantasy. Being in a giant, weighty mech. Everything feels very heavy, right? When you're dashing around, when you're floating around, when you're jetpacking, when you're strafing and shooting, and when a melee mech is coming at you, it definitely feels like giant robots are fighting. And for that purpose, I think it does have some redeeming qualities. If you're here for a Gundam game, then I think you get what you want out of it. Its hero shooter aspects aside, it's a good Gundam game. Now the hitboxes. Now this was easily the most infuriating part. The movement, not great, but the hitboxes are horrible. Now, the headshots rarely felt like I got robbed on the headshots. So the heads were in the correct places. There was a reasonable crit box. But the body shots, so the GM and the Pale Rider, I believe, are the two smallest units, and it felt like every unit had the same hitbox as these two small units. The larger, tankier units could kind of just float at you, and if you were shooting them anywhere but dead center in the chest, the shots just would not register on them. So, what's the overall sentiment? If I had to give it a numerical rating, I'd say maybe a 4 out of 10. If you're rating it as a hero shooter, then it's going to be pretty low. That's really not the experience you're getting here, or at least it's not a quality hero shooter experience. But it is a Gundam game, right? If you're here because of Gundam fandom and you want to play as a big-ass Gundam and feel powerful and do mech battle things, then this game could be pretty fun for you. So really, it just depends on what you want out of it. And if you want to just have some goofy fun with a game that is, kind of comically bad, then this game is good for that. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I play games that are bad for goofy fun all the time. But that's just my take on the game. I'd love to hear what some other people thought of it. Let us know in the comments.
So is it okay if I use